Hello to the Coon family. It's old Tin Can, now from Arkansas. I had a few things I wanted to share while I was up there, but timing never happened to be perfect, and that's okay. So here goes. So I grew up in Elsie, but other than seeing the farms and being around farming, before I came to your house and met Kurt, I knew pretty much nothing about farming, which leads me to, I guess my intro will be a quote by Dwight D. Eisenhower. Farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. That's how I was and how a lot of people are today. So one of the things I want to iterate that I picked up from your farm, and from Kurt mainly, was respect for the American farmer. Just watching him grow up, there's kind of give you a perspective of what I seen that maybe you didn't realize. I was raised by Charles, my stepdad, who was awesome, still is awesome, great guy today. But he was a factory worker, and he would work second shift. So I would see him go to work, see him most time be sleeping by the time he came back, be in school the next day, and sometimes I wouldn't see him till the weekend. But when he was home, he was off work. And when he was gone to work, he was at work. And so I basically didn't know anything about who he was or what he did for the most part, which was completely different at your house. I would come over there, spend the night with James, play video games till the middle of the night or whatever we did. Wake up the next morning for breakfast, where at my house, everybody would be sleeping. My dad worked second shift. My mom was at the bar a lot of times. She worked at the bar serving food. Of course, my sister was older, so she was gone. But come to your place there and wake up for breakfast, and it'd be kind of like, everybody's showing up at the table, and Kurt would be coming in from doing morning chores on the weekend. Completely different than what I was raised by, and it was just neat to see. It was neat to see that, there's no downtime for the American farmer. Like I was saying, respect for the American farmer. I learned that from your house. It's a 7-day-a-week job that I knew, and most people I think know absolutely nothing about. By the time he would come in the morning, he'd be bringing in the milk for the day, and the rest of America hasn't even woke up yet. So I'm going to take a moment to share a couple things that I learned from your farm, maybe a couple experiences that I picked up on. One is apparently farmers can fart on command. I know that might sound funny, but that was hilarious as a kid. And I remember, James trying to tell Kurt to work up a fart, and Georgianne, you were, embarrassed like any mom would, like, no, don't do that at the dinner table. So anyways, that was funny. But on the flip side, I learned how to milk a cow. I'd never even been within arm's reach of a cow except for your house. I also learned that Kurt could, squirt milk into your mouth from a good 4 to 5 feet away. That's definitely interesting for, an 8 to 10-year-old kid out there. Talked about the milk a minute ago. My first and only, I would say, real glass of milk came from your place. I'm talking like in the glass jar. I even had to look up to make sure there wasn't some kind of crazy name for that glass jar of milk. But let the milk sit out, scrape the cream off, that kind of stuff. I had no clue. Now I look back, like, that would be amazing if that's something I can do out here. Like that's the kind of lifestyle that I'm living now, and I was introduced to that stuff from you all. But as you know, I moved away, and it was 30 years ago now. I told part of this story late at night, but not everybody was there. When I moved away 30 years ago, I spent 20 of those years in the military, which, it's a completely different lifestyle than being at home at a farm, or growing up in Elsie. Spent 20 years on active duty. I spent 536 of those days deployed to a combat zone. I spent over 300 of those days I spent 365 of them, but 300 of those days I was considered a convoy commander, right in the capital city of Kabul, Afghanistan. Kabul is like a bowl, if you don't know. There's an airport in the center, and So I had a team of 7 people that I was responsible for. And so there was a team of 8, sorry, I was responsible for 7 other people. But I'd have to give the secret intel for the day, and, hey, we're going to head out to, Bagram province or whatever in a convoy. And, these guys that have a $20,000 bounty out for any American head they can take that day. And that's what I did for a year. I worked for 300 days straight. But I say all that because what I really want to iterate is trauma. I've learned a lot about trauma throughout the years. I work with this company, Sheepdog, and I spend a lot of time on trauma and helping other people with their traumas and helping people get past witnessing trauma or being, hit by an IED or whatever the case was. But I say all that because in a lot of my understanding and in counseling and training and being able to help other people pull their traumas out, I realized that, you never forget your first trauma. And like I was saying there that night, my first trauma was at Coon Farm. I'd guesstimate I was 10 years old, and I happened to walk in the farm. I'm sure we were up playing Excite Bike, or we were playing, Duck Duck, or whatever the duck shooting game is, or Super Mario, or Punch Out, or whatever we were doing till wee hours of the morning. Got up the next morning and probably wanted to go ride the 110 and 200 three-wheeler or whatever, so we had to run out to the farm and look up Kurt and ask, can we go for a ride? And of course, I walk in and the vet's there that day, the veterinarian. I probably hardly knew what a veterinarian was, let alone, what artificial insemination was or what was about to happen. So I'm standing there all, completely clueless as the vet shows up and he starts to roll his glove all the way up his arm. Those things literally come up to the shoulder, and still nothing, no idea what's about to happen. And it was about 10, 15 seconds later, I experienced my first trauma that I cannot check out of my head ever. It was, hilarious. But so, PTSD, learned PTSD from the Coon Farm too. Just kidding about that. But on the flip side of that, I learned respect for animals. I remember when the first couple calves were being born that I've never seen anything like that. And, not only were the calves just born, they were put out front of the farm. I remember you had the little houses. Some of them were still there that day. You had the little fence around the house, and, that's the whole family would join up and go out there, and it'd be, your bottle feeding calves. That to somebody who knows nothing about farming, that teaches somebody love and respect for animals, and that was pretty cool. But one of the biggest things I learned is a story that I always get told every time I come up there. I get told by either Kurt, I get told by Kenny. I've only seen Kurt in person probably, 4 or 5 times in the last 30 years since I moved away from there. But the one thing that he was good at was showing other people respect that deserved his respect. And somehow he thought I deserved his respect as a young kid. And the reason he thought that is, probably several reasons, but one of the main reasons is a story that I'm always told by either him or Kurt. So I don't know what we were doing that day. They were working on the three-wheeler. And I guess something had happened. They dropped a bolt or a spark plug or whatever it was down inside the old three-wheeler. Couldn't hardly fish it out. I walked up and they're just looking, trying to find it. Me being the curious boy that I was, and of course scrawny little tin can, as you all call me. I was small, so I look around in there and I'm like, well, let me see if I can get it. I can reach my hand in there, and I reach my hand down in there and grab it. Completely harmless, thoughtless thing for most people, but for Kurt and for Kenny both, that was obviously meaningful to them. And the coolest thing about that whole story is that they took the time over and over to make sure that I knew that, stepping out of my comfort zone and helping them made a difference. And that didn't hit me. Sometimes you have to grow up to know, what good things about your parents that they were teaching you, or or your friend's parents, for example, like Kurt. So I was 18 years old, had just went through boot camp, got to my first base. You know, I've been through all the schooling and everything, and I'm certified to do the job, but I've never actually done the mechanic job that I was assigned to do yet. So you don't really do a whole lot. You're kind of bouncing around a shop and learning. And I walked up what they call a hydraulic test stand, a hydraulic mule. It's a 4-cylinder Detroit diesel engine driven hydraulic pump with lines and valves and everything all over the place. Its job is to pressurize the hydraulic system on the aircraft so the aircraft can operate its flaps and that kind of stuff while it's on the ground. But either way, they had a problem with it. They had a leak, and when you open up the doors on the side of this thing, it's like the size of a panel van. Would be the best way to explain it. When you open up the doors inside of this thing, there's hoses and wires and things everywhere, and you could see the valve all the way down on the inside that was leaking. And I want you to know that I thought about Coons Farm right at that exact time, and I thought about Kurt and all the stories all the times that he had told me about this, and that's exactly what I did. He molded me with that story. That's exactly what I did. Is I was like, hey, I'm small, I can squeeze in there, and sure enough, they gave me a monkey wrench. I climbed in there, tightened it up, and just a little different perspective is kind of what I wanted to share. That maybe you hadn't reflected back on what life was like 30 years ago and how impactful it was to young people like me. So that leaves me with my final quote, and just want to tell you guys that I love you and I'm here for you, and I had some great memories growing up. So the final quote is by E.W. Stewart. Agriculture was the first occupation of man. It embraces the whole earth. It is the foundation of all other industries, and I'm proud to have known Kurt the American farmer.